I wasn't supposed to be home that day. My flight got rescheduled last minute, an international conference canceled due to weather. Tired and jet-lagged, I dragged my suitcase up the familiar front steps of the house I still technically owned a third of, hoping to shower and sleep for 12 straight hours. But the moment I turned the corner to the driveway, I knew something was wrong. There were too many cars, and balloons, and a huge banner that stretched across the porch that read, "Family means forever." At first I laughed. Maybe it was a surprise party? But that laugh faded as I walked through the front door and realized what I had actually walked into. The entire house was packed. Every cousin, aunt, uncle, even people I hadn't seen since childhood, 99 relatives, all crammed into the living room, the kitchen, the backyard, even upstairs, laughing, eating, and catching up. But not one single person had thought to tell me. Not one invitation. Not even a text. I stood in the doorway, invisible. My own mother looked me in the eyes and froze like she'd seen a ghost. Then she turned back to her conversation, pretending I hadn't just walked in. It hit me in waves. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a forgetful oversight or a miscommunication. This was deliberate. And the worst part? They were celebrating unity, love, and forever, without the one person who had sacrificed more than anyone to keep this family together after Dad passed. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I turned around, walked out, and got back in the cab I'd just paid for. My suitcase never even made it upstairs. That ride back to the airport was silent, but my mind was anything but. I wasn't going to beg for a place at a table I helped build. No, I had something better in mind. You see, I still owned part of that house. Legally. A third of it, to be exact, signed over to me in Dad's will. And while they played happy family, I made one decision that would change everything. I accepted a research position abroad, 6 figures, a fully funded apartment, and more peace than I'd known in years. And then I did something bold. I listed my portion of the house for rent. Legally. Quietly. Professionally. And soon, a very polite but firm international tenant moved in, one who was completely within their rights to occupy the space my family thought they owned. The first voicemail from my brother came in the next morning. Then another. And another. Screaming, pleading, threatening. Suddenly, I wasn't so forgettable. Suddenly, my presence, or lack of it, was felt in every corner of that house. But this was only the beginning. What started as a silent exit turned into the kind of slow-burn revenge that no one saw coming. And by the time the dust settled, everything about family had been redefined on my terms. What happened next? Let's just say, the house wasn't the only thing that got a 6-figure offer. The calls didn't stop. At first, it was my brother, angry, confused, shouting into the phone like that would somehow undo everything. Then it was my mother, her voice shaking with a mix of guilt and disbelief, trying to sound composed as she asked if I had really rented out part of the family home to strangers. She said strangers like it was some kind of crime, as if I hadn't been treated like one just a few days earlier. They kept saying things like, "You're overreacting," or "It was just a mix-up." But 99 people don't accidentally plan a reunion and forget one name. Not when they booked catering, printed shirts, and strung up that huge banner. Someone made a list and I wasn't on it. Here's what they didn't know. This wasn't the first time I'd felt excluded. Growing up, I was the one who stayed behind to clean up after events, the one who gave up personal plans to help mom with errands or looked after younger cousins when no one else would. When Dad got sick, I moved back in to help, even left my research fellowship for over a year just to be there. My siblings? They visited for holidays and birthdays. I was there for the messy middle. After Dad passed, I didn't fight when they suggested keeping the house in the family. I agreed, even when it meant letting them use the place like it was theirs alone. But deep down, I always wondered if they truly saw me as part of it anymore. That reunion answered the question. The tenant I rented my portion to wasn't random. He was a quiet postdoc from overseas, here on a university fellowship, and needed temporary housing close to campus. He kept to himself, paid rent on time, and followed every rule. It wasn't about making their lives miserable. It was about reminding them that the house wasn't just theirs to use and forget about me. Soon, I heard through an aunt that things at the house were tense. Nobody could enter the space they'd casually used as a guest room or storage because it now belonged to someone with a lease. My brother kept calling, his tone swinging wildly between demands and guilt trips. My sister emailed me a long message titled, "Let's be reasonable," filled with passive-aggressive lines like, "We didn't think you'd want to come," and "You're always so busy with your career." But they were missing the point. It wasn't about the house. It wasn't even about the reunion. It was about respect and the quiet way they'd erased me from something I had helped build. That hurt in a way I hadn't expected. But I also knew I had a choice: to keep waiting for them to treat me like I mattered, or to show them, in my own quiet way, that I did. And as word spread through the family group chat, yes, the same one I had been quietly removed for months ago, the whispers began. What is she doing? Is she serious? She wouldn't really sell her share, would she? Oh, but I would.
Just not to them. Not yet.
The tension in the house simmered like a pot left on low heat, quiet but constant. I wasn't there, but I didn't have to be. My cousin Jenna, the only one who still talked to me without pretending nothing had happened, sent updates now and then. She told me how the family started arguing behind closed doors. My brother wanted the tenant out, said it was disrupting the peace. But the lease was legal, and the tenant had every right to stay. My mother didn't say much, apparently just walked around the house like a ghost, unsure whether to take sides or pretend everything was fine. What no one realized was that this tenant was the least of their problems. The real issue was me, someone they had chosen to erase quietly and who now held more power than they ever expected. I wasn't out for revenge in the traditional sense. There were no angry confrontations, no screaming matches, or dramatic walkouts. This was about control, about boundaries, about making them face what they did without saying a word. And that silence? It drove them mad. Meanwhile, my international job gave me distance and perspective. I started focusing more on my career and less on the emotional weight I'd been carrying. But every time my phone lit up with another missed call or guilt-laced message, I felt that old ache again. Was I really the problem? Had I become too distant over the years? Or had they just grown comfortable taking me for granted? One day, Jenna told me about a heated dinner where my uncle accused my brother of mismanaging the family property. He brought up the fact that I legally owned a third and could sell it to anyone. That shook them. Suddenly, my presence, though physically absent, was looming over every conversation. Lawyers were mentioned. So were buyouts. But I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. At the same time, an old friend from grad school reached out. He was now working with a nonprofit that specialized in community housing and was curious about my ownership in the property. He said, "Ever thought about turning it into something bigger than just a house?" That question stayed with me. Because what if this wasn't just about revenge, but about creating something meaningful from the betrayal? While the family squabbled over dinners and family chat threads, I was quietly exploring options. And with each passing day, I felt less like the forgotten one and more like the one in control. The days grew heavier with unspoken threats and thinly veiled warnings. My brother's voicemails turned from angry rants to desperate pleas, begging me to reconsider before things spiraled out of control. He warned about family lawsuits and called late at night, his voice cracking under the weight of frustration and fear. But I stayed calm, careful not to let the chaos reach me. I knew this was a test of patience, not a battle to be won with yelling or accusations. Behind the scenes, the family meetings became more secretive, with whispers about buying me out, about forcing me to sell. But every time they tried, I held my ground, knowing that giving in now would mean losing more than just a house. It would mean surrendering my voice and my dignity. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, some kind, many bitter, all reminding me how far I'd drifted from the family I once called home. And then the unexpected happened. My lawyer called one evening with news that a serious offer had come in, not from my family, but from an outside investor intrigued by the house's potential. It was a six-figure proposal, one that could settle everything if I accepted. I sat in silence, heart pounding. Was this the moment to end the standoff? Or was it just the calm before the storm? That night, I received a message from my mother. Simple, but heavy with meaning. We need to talk. For the sake of family. My mind raced. What did she want? A truce? An apology? Or was this the beginning of a final confrontation I had been preparing for all along? I stared at the screen, knowing this was the turning point. The reunion that excluded me had set everything in motion. Now, the next move would change everything. The question was, who would truly win when the dust finally settled? Just as I was preparing myself for that conversation with my mother, something unexpected happened, something that shook the whole foundation of this family drama. My lawyer called again, sounding more serious than before. There's been a development, she said quietly. The family has found a way to challenge your ownership. They've hired a firm to dig into the will, looking for anything that could invalidate your claim. I froze. After everything, the silent exclusion, the legal lease, the offers, I hadn't seen this coming. This wasn't just about family disagreements anymore. It had become a full-blown battle over rights, money, and legacy. The stakes were higher than I thought. At the same time, I started receiving messages from relatives I barely recognized, some offering sympathy, others filled with thinly veiled warnings. My brother's tone had shifted again. Now it was colder, more calculating. No more desperate voicemails, just short texts like, think carefully about your next move, and this isn't over. It felt like a warning and a threat. Then came the biggest shock. A cousin I barely spoke to reached out privately. She told me she'd overheard a secret meeting where my family discussed selling the house behind my back, without my consent. They were trying to squeeze me out completely, using the legal challenge as leverage. The family reunion was just the beginning of their plan, a distraction while they moved the pieces on the board. Suddenly, the story I thought I controlled was spiraling in directions I hadn't imagined. What started as a quiet revenge had ignited old wounds, deep betrayals, and power plays I hadn't seen coming. Now, with the family's challenge looming and my claim under attack, I was forced to decide. Hold firm and risk losing everything, or find a new way to reclaim not just the house, but the respect I deserved. The real question was, who would break first? I knew the family's legal challenge wasn't something I could ignore. With everything on the line, I gathered my documents, hired a sharp lawyer, and prepared for what felt like a battle I never wanted but couldn't avoid. The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and tense negotiations. My brother's cold messages turned into cautious attempts at dialogue, but I was no longer the sister who would back down easily. When the day finally came to meet face-to-face, the air was thick with years of unresolved pain and grudges. The family sat around the old dining table, the same one where so many memories were made, looking tired, defensive, and somehow defeated. I laid out my case calmly, showing the lease agreements, the legal paperwork proving my ownership, and the offers that had come in from outside investors. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect and standing my ground. To my surprise, my mother spoke up first. Her voice was soft but firm. She admitted that excluding me from the reunion was a mistake, a hurtful oversight that tore more than just the surface of our family bond. She asked for forgiveness, not just for the reunion, but for years of neglecting my role in the family. My brother, after a long silence, finally nodded. The walls he'd built around anger and pride started to crumble. What followed wasn't the explosive confrontation anyone expected, but a difficult, honest conversation about how we'd lost our way. In the end, a deal was struck. I would buy out their shares at a fair price, but with one condition: before closing, we would spend time together to rebuild what had been broken. It wasn't an easy choice, but it felt right. Just when I thought the story had reached its close, my lawyer handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from Dad, written years ago, but never shared. In it, he expressed his hopes for us, his children, to remain united, to support each other, and to remember that family isn't just about property or reunions. It's about forgiveness and moving forward. That unexpected message changed everything. It wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about healing and redefining what family truly means. The letter from Dad was more than just words on paper. It was a reminder of what we had lost and what we still had a chance to rebuild. Reading his hopes and wishes for us brought a mix of emotions, sadness for the years of distance, but also a quiet hope that maybe this was the moment our family could start healing. After the deal was finalized and the buyout completed, we didn't jump into perfect harmony overnight. Healing takes time, but what changed was the tone. Instead of silent grudges and hidden resentments, conversations became more honest. My brother and I began talking about what happened, about how exclusion and silence had driven a wedge between us. We shared regrets and fears, acknowledging that sometimes family doesn't mean always agreeing, but standing together even when it's hard. The house that once symbolized division slowly became a place for new memories. I used part of my investment to renovate it, opening up spaces where we could gather, not just as relatives but as people who wanted to reconnect. The tenant I'd rented the room to stayed on, becoming part of the story rather than a problem. And Jenna? She became my bridge back to the family, always reminding me that even when things seem broken, there's a way to put the pieces back together. One thing I learned from this whole experience is that revenge stories don't always have to be about drama or hurtful payback. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is standing your ground with dignity, reclaiming your power, and setting boundaries that protect your well-being. It's about showing that you won't be erased or forgotten, not through shouting or fights, but through quiet strength and smart choices. Looking back, I realized that the "Family Means Forever" banner they hung without me was more than just a sign at a reunion. It was a challenge, a reminder that family isn't just about blood or events, but about the respect and love we give each other every day. And sometimes it takes walking away to see that clearly. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's ever felt left out, underestimated, or pushed aside by those closest to them. It's proof that you don't have to accept being ignored or mistreated, and that reclaiming your voice can lead to unexpected healing. In the end, the family reunion that excluded me turned into a journey of self-discovery and strength. I found peace not by burning bridges, but by building new paths. Paths where family means more than just being there. It means being seen, heard, and respected. That's the true power of the best revenge stories, the kind that change lives, and sometimes change families forever.